Joe. Thank you very much for agreeing to let me interview you about your experience with the program. I was thinking about it. We probably technically finished 3 months ago, but then you went on holiday for quite a while and came back and we did another session last month. So is that fair? Was it about 3 months ago that you went off on holiday?
I've forgotten. It seems like it was only yesterday.
A while back.
Yeah, no, it's 3 months ago. Yeah, we left in sort of mid-August, and then we're away for 6 weeks, and which was great.
And then we reconnected afterwards, and you've obviously been able to maintain over that time. But I think if we can go back in our memory to when you reached out, we met initially when I had the clinic years ago, but we'd sort of fallen out of touch. You had some stuff going on for you that made you sort of want to do the program. Do you remember what you're experiencing, what was bothering you, and I guess what goals you brought to the program?
Yeah, I have always been an active person, and I've always been in competitive sport. And as I was getting older, I was still playing cricket, running, surfing, but I was starting to injure myself. And I seemed to be spending a lot of time at myotherapists or physiotherapists. And it was through one of those myotherapists that I was introduced to you, Matt, you may recall, which was
back in the day,
yeah, Brandon and Sam, I was just sick of being hurt. I was sick of being injured, and I'm saying every year I was injured 2 or 3 times, and calves, hamstrings, groins, then so I had a couple of obviously difficult ones, which were impact injuries. Nothing you can do about that, but certainly the soft tissue stuff was very, very frustrating. I wasn't enjoying my life. And so what I found was that I sort of got a little bit out of shape as well because I was injured all the time. And that's when I came and started to see you.
Yeah, and that would have been like 2017 or 18 or something. And then we sort of didn't really work. You got a good result back then, I hope, and you were happy training. And then we reconnected this year, and sort of things had started going a bit south for you again. You'd sort of fallen out of the rhythm, and body wasn't feeling right. What was going on this time around?
Yeah, so I unfortunately I cut my leg over in Indonesia surfing and ended up with a very bad infection that put me in hospital for 20 days. And I've since that happened, I've had 3 operations on my right ankle to I guess try and clean it out. And that was meant that as a result, my right ankle is not moving as well as it was. And so what I was finding again was I was coming back to, hamstring injuries last year. I unfortunately popped my AC joint. Again, nothing you could do about that. But what I found was my body was getting out of whack, and I went back to trying to mimic what we did, and particularly, with the split deadlifts and the ab wheels and the bands. But what I'd found was that I reckon, and I think you confirmed it when we started, that I'd lost my shape and lost my
everything.
I lost my technique, and so I really wanted to reconnect to get that back, and get strength back into my body, and I feel like I've done that. I've played almost half a season of cricket now without a injury, and haven't quite got back in deeply into my surfing, but that's just a time thing. So I'll certainly be doing that over the next 5 weeks as I take some time off. So my goal, I wanted to be strong. I wanted to feel strong. I wanted to be able to still compete and play sport. I want to go surfing with my mates. And, I knew from what I'd done with you previously that if I went about structuring up my exercise in a different way, that I would get there. So, and along the way, I guess we'll talk about what we learned later, but, there's certainly some core principles that I learned along the way, in our intensive. So.
Yeah. I think So there was obviously a continuity between what we'd done in the clinic before, even though that was in a different format, I guess, didn't have as many bells and whistles. And, obviously I've had some more experience over the years since and things have been refined a little bit, but certainly it's a similar ethos that runs through it. I remember you sort of, when we did reconnect this time, yeah, very much like you feel like your body's falling apart. Things are just like you're, I think, hyper aware of when things are just tracking in a wrong direction for you.
Yeah.
And you want to be, not just like maintaining, but getting stronger and fitter and being able to surf into your 120 and whatever goals we've got in the background. For you, as you sort of jump back into it, yeah, you noticed, or we sort of identified pretty early, it's not that you were doing everything like super bad, just everything had been kind of shifted by time. Yeah. Like everything, legs were getting a bit too wide in the split dead, different things were changing. Once you got back into it, I'm curious, how quickly did you sort of notice a positive change once we took you from feeling very much like, oh, this is not working for me, a little bit of a refresh, and then how quick did you notice a difference?
Well, after the first session, I felt like a car had hit me. I was that sore.
A good car, a positive car, a bad car.
A big car. I remember we worked so hard in that first session, and I think I might have sent you some messages afterwards about, oh my God, my glutes are very angry with me.
Yep.
But it happened pretty quickly, I'd have to say. Sort of the next session and a little bit of soreness. You pushed me with my sore shoulder to do things that there's no way I would have done otherwise. And then that sort of made that a bit cranky. But I honestly reckon it was probably 2 sessions in and I started to feel it. And also what happened, because, we went back to the core principles, I was able to, exercise correctly in my home gym. And I went and bought a set of, of kettlebells, from sort of 8 up to 24. And so I've continued to use those kettlebells and it's really paid and is paying dividends.
Yeah, I was very pleased, obviously, when you come back from holiday, and I hadn't heard from you for a while because I think you had a bit of work that had piled back up, and I was prodding you, going, just checking in, how you going? The ability to maintain it and to be able to maintain long-term is really the name of the game, right? Feeling that you sort of have that skill set. Yeah. You mentioned the shoulder. So we sort of had like the 2 goals, like lower body wasn't flowing, I guess, in a way that sort of supported all the sporting activities you wanted to do. But the shoulder was this sort of quite affecting your sleep and sort of following you after that injury. And you sort of mentioned then it was sort of a bit of a like pushing you into things you weren't necessarily, like, what was that? If we think about the shoulder as like a project, were there any surprises there as you were sort of bouncing back from that injury?
Yeah, I think, I was worried that I was going to re-injure it doing some of the things that we did. Yeah. But then we got through it and I didn't re-injure it. It made it feel weird when we were doing it, and it was difficult. But it certainly, it helped heal, and in fact, it really moved the whole pain and everything into a much better scenario. And I think had we kept going instead of me going on holidays, that it would have been entirely removed. I'm now still got a little bit of residual stiffness in my shoulder, but it is only at night, and so you've given me the boring shoulder exercise to do before I go to bed. So, which my wife asked me what the hell I'm doing lying on face down on the floor before bed. But so I am trying to get that, get that right. And, I know once I do that, and I think it'll really help once I get back into my surfing. I think that's going to be really, I think it's going to be really good for it. So, but no, it shifted it from, how am I going to throw a cricket ball? How am I going to bowl? The bowling was actually okay. It was throwing that I was more worried about. Yeah. And also
sleeping on it. Yeah.
Yeah, and sleeping on it. That's right. So, through our program and what we did, it was significantly improved and significantly assisted my sleep. I could finally sleep and I'm typically a right side sleeper, and I was sleeping on my opposite side or trying to. It was really annoying. And, once it got better, it was very nice to get back on the right-hand side. So,
Yeah, the presence of pain, like niggles, like you're gonna have them, and I think like the idea is you don't obviously do the program like never experience pain again, but it's like, what does that pain mean? What does it hold you back from? And as you sort of touched on, then you felt maybe you got your like the final bit got kind of interrupted, and now you got a little bit of a job still sitting there waiting for you. But that you feel comfortable in understanding what that job is, you know how to solve it. It's not blowing that much. Yeah. And so what happens? A lot of people they kind of don't ever finish their rehab properly, because what happens is it gets down manageable enough. Yeah. But the reality is there's other stuff in your life that actually should be getting the attention. Like, you don't need a perfect body. You need a body to do all the things you want to do. And you're like, okay, cool. At some point when I get some headspace, I'm going to do the last 10%. Yeah. But I think that's a very normal way to sort of approach it. And so, the shoulder resolved more or less. You know what you have to do there. You go over the line. Lower body's going well halfway through the season of cricket.
Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of interested if you have, you mentioned it before, like, what were the sort of differences between what we do and what you've done in the past that you think contributed to having because you were getting treatment and you were getting support during that process for the shoulder, for the lower body that wasn't working. What do you think was sort of different about this approach?
Simple. I was I was going to the symptoms instead of treating the causes, and that became very apparent to me as we started, and and I started to feel my body getting stronger, and I think I'm like, no, that makes sense. I've been focusing on the wrong aspect. Can you make this not hurt so much, instead of let's get it fixed up? And so that was a big one. And I think even now, thinking about my shoulder, to be able to jump back into my portal that you gave me and look at those the boring shoulder exercise, and just be reminded how important the scapular retraction and that sort of thing is in that exercise. It's I think that's been a big thing for me, is that what you've taught me a lot is about my posture, and the way that I exercise, the way I hold myself. I think you said something like pain's only it's due to a lack of connection between joints, and and so in my mind now I think about things like that when I'm doing something, and I've found it to be really, really very helpful.
So that's sort of reframing what that discomfort is, and that connection between joints. So the idea, like, load when we're doing something, holding a pen, moves through our body, and if it's getting stuck somewhere due to alignment issues, over time that can contribute to a pain response. So go back into that and that was very prevalent with the shoulder, and the movements that you were feeling vulnerable in was, we'd put you in these positions that felt very challenging for the shoulder, and you'd get that pain symptom and be like, cool. Yeah. Let's be mindful of the position. Let's breathe into it. Let's shift. And you'd be like, oh, the pain's gone now. And you kind of sweep it out almost. You sort of, you have the pain here, and then you have the pain there, and then you have the pain there, and then it's just kind of gone. So that makes sense. So for you, there was an element of just reclassifying what that signal meant to you,
I agree.
Not, as opposed to resting versus training or something.
I agree. I think, I was scared of it, the pain. And, when you asked me to do some things, particularly on my shoulder, I was thinking to myself, oh, man, this is going to be really bad. And it wasn't, sort of, yes, it did hurt. And yes, it was a little bit of residual. But then slowly, and I can remember you asking me, about my shoulder, where was the pain? And it was moving, and it was at the same time it was moving, and it was decreasing as a total. And so, to actually, I guess, be led through that and almost given a pass to say, well, don't worry about the pain. It's going to be okay. You're not going to make it any worse because of the pain. Push through it, and it'll have dividends. And it did, which is way different to anything that, that I've ever done with anyone before. Because, you hit that pain point, you stop.
Yeah.
You think, oh, I'm going to do more damage. But in fact, the key, is to get stronger,
Yeah, I think that what we do when we experience that pain is the whole game. Like, that's because the only way to guarantee that you're going to stay sore is to do nothing. Like, if you don't do anything, you will stay sore, like almost certainly. And if you do something that looks really, people talk about functional movement a lot, and I don't always love the word, because there's a lot of stuff people say is a functional movement. but it doesn't actually necessarily look like a movement we've evolved to do, say, like a burpee or something, like, up and down, up and down, up and down. We wouldn't do that in nature. But when we start to look at movements that our bodies evolved to do, and we start to introduce them, true functional movements, 9 times out of 10, you're like, oh, this works better than ibuprofen. This works better than taking a week off the things that I love doing. So I think that's it's something that,
Matt, right there is what what you're saying exactly. These are things that you don't get from other people, and I remember you saying to me, good quality load is like medicine, and I'm thinking, okay, well, I've got to have faith in this, and I did, and I pushed through, and and hence get the results.
Yeah, it's always stoked to hear it because I think the learning is the key thing. Like, that's the skill set you get to take with you, moving forward, and baked into that instinct of what to do when we're sore, because everything else is telling us to do the opposite. Everything is subtly saying bodies are fragile. Don't you dare lift that. You'll hurt yourself. Very tight here, very weak here.
Yeah. And I think, as we're all getting older, but, sort of being in my early 60s now, it's given me, I guess, a bit of a structure for how I can stay active, and that's not to go and sit on the couch, it's actually to be trying to train properly, really be conscious about my posture. So it is a sort of, because you live it all the time, you probably don't see it, but for someone who comes to you and they aren't used to that, right, it's a bit of a game changer.
Yeah, I think definitely I'm too close to it. Like, I really appreciate you calling that out, but I'm definitely, and it's part of why I like doing these interviews too, because a lot of times I learn stuff as well about what is the thing that makes people have those aha moments. Yeah. And certainly, we met 2017, 2018, and I think I was quite good at my job then, right?
Yeah.
And I was better at my job then than in 2012 when I started the clinic, and 2010 when I came out of, right? Like, there's a process of all therapists, I think, and every profession, it's not a medical thing.
Yeah.
But this sense of like refining and improving over time, what's resonating, what gives people that kind of confidence, which is fundamentally in a lot of ways different to how a lot of these professions are structured, which is the underlying paradigm is like you learn it at uni and you regurgitate it in the treatment room. Do you know what I mean? Like, regurgitate is probably too strong. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a this is how bodies work, and not necessarily how can we be as effective with people as we can be.
Yeah, I remember when I told you about what the physio gave me after I'd hurt my shoulder, that little band, and I think you just started laughing. Said, "That's useless."
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm often trying not to be too negative about the industry, but as you and I both know from having lots of conversations, there's a lot of stuff that happens that just doesn't make a lot of sense when you shine a light on it. So if you're having all kinds of shoulder issues through all kinds of range, and you get your little band, do this 10 times for 3 goes, and you do that for the rest of your life. And part of it, like, I think you deep down, and almost everyone deep down knows, when we get given exercises that are not cathartic, we can only do them for so long before we get deeply bored and we can't be bored. And as soon as the pain goes, we stop doing them. Whereas I think, what I'm hearing from you and sort of knowing you is a lot of the stuff that I really encourage people to explore are movements that genuinely feel good. And they genuinely feel like they're getting you stronger. And you go, oh my God, I'm going to text Matt because my glutes are killing me, you bastard. That's a very different dynamic too, to like the, isolate, protect. That is so prevalent. And I think, there's a real conservatism that we get exposed to, particularly when we're sore, when we're told you got to do less. Yeah. You got to do it really perfectly or else. And until you can do that, God forbid you go and do other things that might spark some joy. So it's always a real pleasure to see people go from a subtracting phase where they're getting sore and sore and they feel like things aren't working and they're doing less and less and they've given up cricket, they've given up the surfing. And then you see this just like the underdog coming from behind being like, I can do all the things I want to do again. And that's honestly like one of the most fun things about getting to work with people is seeing them realize how capable they are again.
Yeah, no, it is. It's it's a big impact on my life anyway. It's just to be able to to still do it. You know, it's you know, work, as you know, I work a relatively stressful job that's pretty you know, pretty taxing, and to be able to get out there and, you know, just fire off a bit, and, you know, it's pretty good fun.
Awesome. I think that's my last question is normally what are your takeaways from the program, Greg? But I think we covered that pretty succinctly. So I reckon that's probably a really nice place to sign off. You've obviously had a pretty busy day getting to the end of it. So massive thank you for sharing your story, and I look forward to us catching up and doing some more training again in the future. But yeah, thank you very much for your time and for sharing.
No problems. Speak later, Matt. See ya.